So I was saying to Emily, we didn't work together, but I have great memories, great interactions, and I was just curious to connect back with you. So I think one of the things, Allison had reached out to me and said, "Hey, I don't think you've actually done work with Pearson." I was like, "No," but I just saw what you're doing, and I was like, "Oh, this is so cool." Like, I want to connect with Lisa and talk to her a little bit more about what's happening because, you know, in I guess through other conversations, I've talked about Pearson a few different times, and just through the pandemic, what was happening there, the acceleration of digital, the experience design piece. There's a couple individuals that I know now who are working there. So Trip, and I forget his last name, but Trip is there, and Sal, he's an ex-IBM member who's there. I forget his last name too, but anyways, like there's a few people there who are really focusing on transformation and digital, and it seemed like has become something, right, that Pearson's really pushing, and hence I think you've come into the role, right, with your background and your experiences. So I'm hopeful, right, just we can have a chat and talk a little bit more, because it just seems from an outsider or an outside view that there's interesting things happening in your organization. So
there is. It's very exciting. And thank you for inviting me, Everton. I do appreciate it. I even had the opportunity, this has been a great week for me, that I got the opportunity to meet our global CEO, Andy Bird. He was in Toronto for a conference, and so the Canadian leadership team met with him, and he is all things Pearson and driving our vision, and just it's only exciting to have that conversation with him. He's such a incredible person in terms of just being very down to earth, and yet at the same time having a great vision to take us forward. And he instills excitement in all of us, and he's obviously driving our culture forward. And so that just fuels me even more than I already am, hyped about innovation and digital transformation. So that's exciting too.
Cool. So maybe that's a nice place for us to start, just talking about innovation and digital transformation. So, let's start with digital transformation. So, what have you seen? You've been at Pearson for a little while. What's exciting you about digital transformation at your clients, at your customers? Can you, let us know?
Yeah, you know what? It's one of the reasons I joined Pearson is innovation is always often driven best by what I call an inflection point. So an inflection point learning, and we're really at that today. So learners are driving the change. We found out through our partner in Google that learners are Googling ROI. They want ROI faster than ever before from any of the learning and education they do, and they want that investment to translate better into career opportunities. With digital becoming more pervasive in our workplace, it's then them realizing they need to upskill and reskill as well. So and it just to share a stat that's kind of astounding to me, and I think you'll find it too, is Holland IQ estimates over 100 million workers will need to consider changing occupations by 2030 as new skills are required, because we've had this significant acceleration with the pandemic in companies adopting digital technologies. And this, will continue. There's more and more technologies ahead, that the use cases are expanding, and, it's becoming more and more pervasive, and in this cycle will just continue. So learners also want, another ask of theirs is if I'm going to invest and I want to invest well, I maybe want to just kind of try and then buy versus, buying a full degree program right away. So this is where it's shifting to certificates. They want certificates, they want stackable learning credentials that are credit eligible to a degree. And then that provides them flexibility. So if they feel like they're on the wrong path, they haven't invested, a significant amount of money yet. So to me, that's where, the transformation is happening, but it's very much centric on the learner. And yes, the pandemic played a role, more recently, but that's what I'm seeing, and this is what we're addressing as we look to the future in innovation and are innovating at Pearson.
So there's a few different things there. So there's the idea of ROI and really getting that return. There's the idea of flexibility, right? And being able to start a path, but then shift quickly and adapt, which is, something that we're seeing, I think, in a lot of different places. And then there's the next piece around just the skill sets and a shifting need in terms of the skill sets. And maybe can we start with the shifting skill sets? So as you start to talk about transformation, organizations, and learning, like where are you seeing the shift? Like what are the types of things, right, that are of most interest for retooling or reskilling?
So in terms of the shifts, you've got more and more AI technology going into organizations, even in a fairly clear function like accounting, but in the back end, more and more of the skills or the processing that is done in a traditional accounting role is shifting. So that they're actually going to need to do less of that and more of the analytics side would be how you could sort of transform that roles. But there's a fairly significant impact. And the reason I know that is we have acquired a company called Fathom, and Fathom is a very interesting organization. So it's an AI platform, so Pearson owned, that anticipates workforce shifts and the need for upskilling and reskilling people for the future. So these insights, so we actually went through an example with Fathom, with the Fathom team within Pearson, and they specifically took us through that accounting example just to show us. So they're looking like 5 years out. Are some roles being eliminated, or can you restructure some roles because we have this automation? But accounting is a fairly well understood, professional area, and in the specific of an accountant, in the starting of their career, that role is going to be different in the future. And so, how do they prepare for that? How do they have those skills? How can academic institutions help them be ready for once they're finishing whatever form of learning they're doing, that they have the skills or the new skills they need to be successful in that job. So
that's interesting, the idea of anticipating, and I think that connects in with something else you mentioned, the ROI. So if you can actually anticipate where the need is, then you can invest early and you can get the return that is helpful to your organization. So can you maybe expand on that and just share a little bit more? Because I do think that's interesting, the anticipating and connecting that into a good return.
Yeah, so it's really, we've got this blurring of learning. I think that's the best word to describe it, right? So the workforce and the employers requiring the new skills, and then learners, while they're taking different courses, some within their organizations, and some through academic institutions, this blending. So it could be someone who's already been in the workforce for a number of years, and then they want to upskill to get that next job. But what upskilling do they really need? What's that job going to look like in 3 years versus today? And this is where we have this melding of, and we, inside Pearson, we work very closely, our virtual learning team, which I'm a part of, and our workforce skills team, because this is where the future is going. And we need to be really thoughtful about how to help prepare those learners for the future so they can be successful and, enrich their lives, is really kind of fundamentally what we're about.
Yeah. And I think that is a connection into the other thing that you're very much responsible for, which is innovation, right? So thinking about what you're doing today, but then as well, potentially what you might do tomorrow, that's going to be very different from today. So maybe my next question to you is really, as you start to think about innovation and kind of doing that in an environment or a team environment at Pearson, I guess, how do you approach that? How do you think about innovation in that environment?
Yeah, I know that's a great question, Everton. So for me, and since I joined Pearson in February of this year, it's been all about putting in place a structured, disciplined approach to innovation. So, we've established a innovation framework within our team. And really what that is all about is just ensuring that we're taking all those steps. I have people with different skill sets going across the innovation framework in terms of my structure. So we're leveraging, data insights to inform, what innovation we're doing. We're, in any ideation, you're going to then market test with learners. So it's all learner-centric. It's a learner-centric innovation approach. And at various steps along the way, whether you've come up with an idea or you're testing an idea, you have to still loop back and see, is it addressing the learner's needs along their journey, from trying to enroll to trying to complete, right, and actually successfully complete, and all those important steps along the way to get them there, and be successful in what they want to do. So that is the way we've approached it. And there's so many other areas of innovation that we're doing within Pearson, but specifically in my team, I want to take this approach so that we really do thoughtfully get to achieving something that's going to add tremendous value to learners. And really what I define as our North Star is to for learners in any programs or services or products or solutions that we're providing, that we can provide something that's got a sustainable, differentiated value that's going to support them in achieving their success. So.
Yeah, a couple of things there, Lisa, I want to talk a little bit more. The first one is learner-centric. And, my firm is very much focused on human-centered design and really thinking about the qualitative pieces of that, right? So emotions, feelings, how do you create environments for trust? And, things like that are a little bit less specific, but are very important nonetheless to having success, along with, the other things that, are more formulaic and quantitative. So coming back to the idea of learner-centered, right? And trying to understand the learner, getting deeper in terms of their motivations, right? Their needs. Can you just talk a little bit more about why that's so important, why you've decided that that's the way for you to really start to think through innovation?
Yeah, no, happy to. So at the heart of all that, as you know, is design thinking principles. And all my team, are involved in having those skills so that they understand, whether they're doing research and insights, or they're academic strategists that do program design for our academic institutions, or their content strategy and product development, they all need to have that learner-centric focus. And that's, how I say, we align to the innovation framework through a learner-centric approach. And it's just so important that, I coming from, and you'll understand this, coming from a previous organization that was deemed a technology organization in IBM, so many great things happening, but I always worry that sometimes, and whether it's an ed tech firm or, former company, we get a little too excited about technology for technology's sake. And really, it has to always be about, how is this helping the learner? How is this reducing friction points for them in their journey? How is it making them successful? And if we take that approach, empathizing with the learner and understanding what really is their challenges as they go through that journey, then we are going to find much better ways to support them with digital technology. And so, there's just so much to unpack there, but I'm very passionate about that being the right approach to take, and always thinking that way. And I'm impressed. I spoke at a conference in April, the ASU GSV Summit, which is a big conference in education. And I was impressed that a lot of people that attended my session were, very familiar with design thinking principles, but it's the application of that is really what it comes down to, as you know, and making sure it's being applied in everywhere. So in structural design, we're applying design thinking principles. It's at all stages of that learner journey that we have to be very thoughtful about that, just because there's so many opportunities with digital technologies, but it's applying them in the right way, right?
Yeah. Yes, 100%, 1,000%. And I think that that's, where I've had some success and where I've seen things in the future in terms of larger organizations really thinking about how do we do this, right? How do we, create the environment for our employees so that they can, either do the work using design thinking principles, or they can benefit from the work that's been done to actually execute and make decisions as they go forward. And it's tricky for large organizations, but it's something that can be done, but it's different, right? It's different than what they've done in the past, and difference means that there's sometimes uncomfort around doing it, and just working through as an organization to get past those moments of challenge. And so absolutely 100%. I don't know if I could say it even more that I agree.
Yes, it's just so important, as you know, and it makes all the difference. And you can, there's evidence through when you are sort of looking at success measurements of how that can make a difference. And it really, fundamentally, we're doing all of this to support learners, and so we're not centric on that. And we have to also support partners, academic institutions we work with. So there's an element there too, because they are a key stakeholder as well. But fundamentally, it comes down to the learner and supporting them.
Yeah. And something else you mentioned that I'm curious about, you said sustainable. So I was curious when you use that word sustainable. So can you talk a little bit more? Why are you thinking about sustainable advantage?
Yeah, I think, there's often ways you can, just innovate and do things. So I'll just share, we're about to release a white paper on what we call a branded marketplace. And it's really helping learners to navigate. There's so many, multi-institution marketplaces. How do you find the learner you want? And so we're offering this to partners and potential partners that, why not, let's give you the capabilities at your university to really have something that is very rich in capabilities. It has the ability to utilize a lot of technology capabilities that you have when you're doing retail things, but it's in a university's context. So, to be able to sort and filter and select and look at, different options and compare to other institutions, and really a one-stop shop for you to help you navigate what do you want to spend that money on, because you're very focused on ROI, and then with moving forward with that, having learners understand the value in having something like that for them. And so it's just exciting. I'm trying to remember exactly where I was going, because I got so passionate on your question. I lost my train of thought. So just repeat what you were asking, Everton. I can be on a tangent very fast on everything I love.
And that's good. And I think that's exciting, right? Just the passion when you have something that you're passionate about.
It's sustainable. Yes. That's it. So in that case, building those capabilities, filtering, favoriting, e-commerce, that's a differentiated value. But to me, you always have to be looking forward at how are you continually innovating, right? So sustainable value is where we go the next level, and we continue to look at, okay, we're getting feedback from learners, how they like the marketplace, but what else can we do? How can we help them even more? What are they telling us? And then the next step is, we might want to look at future capabilities of incorporating Fathom. So, there's something for employers. There's something to help learners based on skills that are needed for a particular area they're interested in. So, so this is the way we're thinking, is always what's the next step in the innovation cycle. It doesn't end. It's not a one and done. So that's where I emphasize sustainable and differentiated, meaning, it's going to help the learner in a different way than before, right? And, we all know examples in our everyday life where, we start to love the ease of doing things, whether it's, you know, Amazon or whoever, and then you go to another retail site and you're disappointed if it doesn't have the same capabilities, right? So it's always sort of looking forwards and thinking about what's next for the learner. How can we help them? Maybe we can predict some of the things based on what they've shared with us, right? So, you know, taking it that next level. So sustainability is sustainable, differentiated value really matters. Yeah.
So that connects to something that I heard in another interview, and it was with a telco executive. And I'll share with you what he mentioned. He said that in the past, they would set up teams. So they would take a lot of time and effort to set up a project team to try and innovate in a specific area of the business. And then, you know, there's a lot of energy, effort taken to do that. They do the project and then everyone would go their separate ways back. And then, you know, then things would kind of go, but then stall. And he suggested that really in his business, he had to find ways that people could experiment all the time, continually as they're doing their business. So they're operationally executing, but they're also, there's room and space in the business for them to, you know, take time to do these experiments, contribute to these things that are happening. And that was where he was pushing towards. And the way he framed it was like having a more agile approach to our business, because we can get very focused where everyone's operational and every once in a while they pull their head up to do something innovative and then they go back, right? But what he wants is he wants people to all the time be able to do the operational aspects of the business and contribute to this experiment so that they're continually happening, not just after, you know, on a one-off, right? You know, every year, every 2 years. So it feels like that's similar in terms of what you're saying there, in terms of you want to keep going. You don't want to just do something once and then try to live off of that for the next 2 years. You want to keep it all the time where you're continually, you know, doing these things on a regular basis. Do I have that right, Lisa?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, as I said, I work within the virtual learning division, specifically in online learning at higher education. But the innovation is happening across Pearson, and I'm just thrilled to have, number one, a dedicated team, so that we can take things from the idea stage through to transition to being, you know, business as usual, or, you know, being operational in the business, and that excites me a lot. But I just think that there is a very strong focus in Pearson across the business on innovating. And you know, I'm going to put a plug in. We did win a Best Company Innovation Award, you know, just this year for Pearson Plus, and it's innovative in that it was subscription-based service for textbooks. And what's exciting is, you know, Andy Bird, our CEO, is sponsoring that, and there's just so much more excitement ahead on where that's going. And then it's about how can we, you know, connect the dots within Pearson on leveraging that as well. And it's just, there's so much excitement. The next stage of what's happening there is, just as a soundbite, is coming out in July. He will be announcing the next stage of that. But that's just one example. And some of it is, you know, it makes sense to do, you know, acquisitions as part of innovation. So there's so many sort of facets of it, including internal, like, you know, I'll loop back to that. But we also purchased Credly, which, you know, from, you know, our former days in IBM, where we earned badges, acclaim badges for what we did. And, you know, and they're you know, that's, you know, part of our vision of the future, that every credential, you know, someone learns is badged and with verified skills, so they have a digital portable resume. So those are just examples as I'm talking about. But I do believe, as you know, the other fellow said, that innovation starts with everyone. You know, that you have to view yourself as an innovator. We are the dedicated team, but it doesn't mean ideas can't come in from other areas. And so what, you know, certainly we continue to encourage that. And so across Pearson, that's what Andy's doing in trying to create that more focus on innovative culture, which is already there. It's just, you know, to me, it's very notable. And that's why I say that. And within my team, I just I call them all innovators. And it doesn't matter if your title is academic strategist or director of market research and insights, you're an innovator because you contribute to the innovation process. And that's the way I've sort of depicted it with them. And everyone loves that. Innovation should not be something that's kind of up here that only selected people do and other people don't fully understand. It should be very understandable to everyone, and everyone understanding that they can contribute to that. And I feel very passionate about that. Yeah, I think it's just so many people have great ideas, and if we harness that power of what everyone does on a daily basis, and then see how we can leverage digital technologies to help, and as I said, with learners at the center of the reason why we're trying something and experimenting, then that's okay. Final thing, I'm sorry, I keep going on, but you get me in a passionate track and I can't stop. We have set up, what we're referring to as OKRs, or objective key results. But one of the ones that's set up for our team is to do experimentation and to do a number of experiments per year. And it's not to say they all have to be 100% successful. Okay, we've just set standards on how many we expect to be successful, and if the others aren't, and that's going through that innovation framework. So you wouldn't be going start to finish and then saying it's not a success. You'd be, assessing as you go, and at a certain stage, like proof of concept, perhaps it's not working. We either retool or we let it go, and that's okay. That's very much part of who we are. But the key thing there is just that people understand that is okay. We're going to take lessons learned from what we did. In fact, this branded marketplace is coming from a couple of experiments that didn't go as well pre me coming in, but we're taking those capabilities, combining them into something that we think is powerful for the market, and so to me, it's exciting, and you have to be comfortable with not having 100% success in everything you do. And it's just managing those investments well, so that we're not investing too much if we don't go on a track that turns out to path the way we want it to, and we pivot and go in another direction, right? That's what innovation is all about in my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And a couple of things there, Lisa. You talked about investing, right? So trying to start to think about where you want to invest. And you also talked about leveraging technology. And I want to connect into the future experience of virtual learning. And do you have any specific thoughts on where you see the experience of virtual learning going? What do you think is important in future experiences?
Yeah, no, I do have some thoughts. Again, it has to be learner-centric focused. I do think that, so the pandemic kind of enlightened us on a couple of things. There was the emergency response where, teachers and institutions had to just suddenly shift online, and it brought two things to light. One is that there is very much a thoughtful approach that needs to be taken for online learning for it to be successful. It's not the same as taking anything that you've done before in person and just putting it on Zoom. And I think everyone in those circumstances did their best. I think teachers are a bit of the heroes of pandemic and trying to be creative with, lots of different challenges, that they experienced. But it also brought to light the need for a lot of thoughtfulness on how you do online learning. And in Pearson, it's been over a decade of doing this, and it's been fascinating to me to learn more about all our people and what we do. But the online learning is important, and the technologies where we can go from here are exciting, because we now have the ability to make learning more immersive and still be learner-centric focused. So then it gives learners different ways of absorbing content and the content that they need to learn. So it's sort of a term we've used is extending flight simulation to more skills and subjects, right? And to me, that just gives me a visual. I've actually been in a flight simulator through my consulting days. But what that means is you have this more immersive environment, and so we have tools that we've created, and this is just, I like to ground things in reality. So Viper is a tool that's been created pre my joining Pearson, where you simulate, we did a crisis communication course. You simulate a crisis happening so that, the students see let's say an explosion on the screen, and then there's, simulated Twitter feeds, and, they're taking this role, and their instructor says, this is your challenge. You need to communicate out, da, 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 da. And then as a team online, they have to figure out how to do that. And, who's going to do what role, who's going to follow the Twitter feeds, what else is coming in. And it's kind of like a real circumstance. Actually, the first time I saw that video, my heart started to race. So, it can be very, very powerful in learning. And of course, there's so much more ahead, as we get into the metaverse, and everyone's sort of seeing, what can we do there? But, there's a real example that I just, shared. And even, so then you go into the learner journey and you look at tutoring. Okay. So, does tutoring only have to be during, sort of a workday hours? Well, no, it doesn't. You can have, tutors 24/7. So we have this smart thinking where, a student can reach out at any time to a tutor. So while you're sleeping, they're getting tutored. And students, they work all hours. So there's just different things you can do. And those are examples of ones that are in place already, but I'm just using them as examples of there's more for the future, right? So we can continue to improve and make experiences so much more real to life that I think students then can, embrace that. And, every subject's different. You have to think of it differently, but I just think the possibilities are exciting. It's exciting what we can do with digital technology.
Yeah, I love that example of the tutor. So, you can tutor online, but there's other parts of the experience, right, that are important. And if you can start to bring in other elements, so as you start to create more of an immersive and a more learner focused, you can get more of the benefits of a one-on-one tutor. I've seen in the past where, there's little things that a tutor does that are really helpful that you don't necessarily get, if it's only a Zoom meeting. So I'm interested to see where those things go in the future at Pearson and what potentially happens with those types of things.
Well, and what was fascinating when I learned more about this offering we have is that the tutors are trained not to give them the answer. They're trained to give them the tools and help them discover the answer. And it's a different process, and it's a skill to do that, right? So I just find that really, really exciting that that's available to help students. And that's what it all, again, it fundamentally comes back to the learner and how do we help them be successful.
So there's a few different things it sounds like you're thinking about for the experience. And it sounds like you're thinking about developing it in-house, right, with these experiments that you're doing, but as well working with partners in the ecosystem to develop and maybe acquire or develop them together. So is there anything else related to the experience that you're thinking about as a leader in Pearson that you think will be important for the future?
Yeah, you're bang on. Strategic partnerships are also part of that. So where in the learner journey is there other organizations? Because there's an explosion of ed tech firms that has happened. I think that's a positive. The inflection point in learning has driven that. I think that's good for everyone. And then it's, what part of our offerings does it make sense to look at partnering? So we're actually doing a couple of proof of concepts to see how those partnerships might work, how we can, help students in different ways. We're, experimenting in different ways. One example is learner analytics. So we're testing where during the course, understanding where students are maybe struggling. Maybe there's some modifications in course delivery that a faculty member can do to help enhance the student's ability to learn and be successful in that course. So lots of different elements, and real time is another element that's so much more exciting than the old batch system with things that just with a student, it has to continually be helping them along the journey and helping them graduate or complete that certificate, whatever they're taking in their learning journey. And I think all those kinds of experiments and proof of concepts help us so that we round out what we're offering. And there may be some organizations, as I said, like that are doing things even better or different than we hadn't thought of, that we can partner with. And so it's exciting. There's so many potential areas of innovation that we're looking at. So there's the within with Credly and Fathom. There's tools like Smart Thinking and Viper. There's ones that we're creating, as you said, like Brennan Marketplace. There's partnerships. And then there's broader things that are happening in Pearson, like Pearson Plus. So I just get very excited that there's so many paths and ways to innovate that can help learners be successful, and that's what it's all about, and help our partners fundamentally at those institutions that they're learning at. So there's just lots of possibilities.
Yeah. And you talked about learner analytics, and I find that area particularly fascinating. The idea that the old way of learning is, or sorry, not the old way, one way is that you would wait and you have the test and then you realize the person has learned or hasn't learned. But if you can do other types of learner analytics as things are happening, as they're actually attempting practice questions, things like that, and start steering and correcting early, how that could be good. And I've seen a few different things written about it, but I just find that whole area of learner analytics, understanding that there's different learning styles. So can we assess individuals based on their learning style? So as well, can we give them the content based on their learning style and bring that all together to hopefully create better results? So fascinating area. And I know you like Pearson is all over it, but I, as an outsider, again, just find those types of things very interesting. The human-centered design combined with that analytics piece to really trying to understand the individual better, what's happening at the moment, the real-time nature of that type of work and what might be possible in the future and how that could create real benefits. So I think that's probably a good place for us to wrap up for today, Lisa. So maybe the only other thing I'd ask you is is there anything else that we didn't cover that you think is particularly interesting and you're particularly passionate about that might be worthwhile to share?
I do think we certainly covered a lot in a short space of time. The only other thing I'll mention, and you sort of touched on it, is anyone who joins my innovation team, we're ensuring they have foundational learning in Agile principles as well as design thinking. I do think they go hand in hand. It doesn't mean that you're already always creating new products. It's just new ways of working, right? Just understanding agility with technology, accelerating things. It's understanding how can we do things in ways that align to that, and also understand how it applies in an innovation framework. So that's kind of exciting for me too. But in terms of just recapping what we talked about, it's really learner-centered innovation is really fundamental to how we have to move forward, and that's the way we're approaching it at Pearson. As I said, there's innovation happening in all our divisions, and I'm just excited to work with my colleagues, outside of virtual learning, as well as my talented team within virtual learning, and that there's just so much more opportunity ahead. I think what I'd love to do, Everton, is we reconnect, I don't know, in a year from now and see where I'm at, see what we're doing, and share more with you, because I just think we're on a great path and lots of opportunity to have an impact. And fundamentally, that's what it's all about, impacting the learner in a positive way. And as you can see, I'm passionate about it. Everyone in Pearson is passionate about it. And that's why I love working at Pearson.
Yeah, well, I will take you up on that invitation, Lisa. And a year from now, I will reach out and we'll have this conversation again. Because, very interesting to see your journey, very interesting to hear the things that you're already working on. And in a year from now, it'll be interesting to hear about the progress that you've made.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'll be excited to share that then, and just see where it's coming from and to, and I'll be more than, 4.5 months into my role.
Well, you definitely have a good handle on what's going on, because I've been very interested just to hear about the different things that you are already talking about that are taking place at Pearson. So wow, but I don't know. It's just it's an exciting role. Just from what I just talking to you, hearing the type of things that you're working on, it's an exciting industry. Like so I don't know. I never shared with you, but I trained as a teacher. So actually, I did my
Oh my gosh.
I did my undergrad at U of T. So I did sciences and stats, and then I did the 1 year teachers college, and then I actually came out and I was working for the Toronto School Board, helping them with their IT program, developing it, because I had a computers background and I was doing some stuff. And then I actually left for a year and I went to the Ministry of Education in the United Arab Emirates. And I was working with them on, they're building out model schools, and they were curious about the stuff that I was doing at the TDSB and some other stuff that was happening that I was part of in the Canadian curriculum. So I did that for a bit. And then initially, when I went back to do my MBA, so I did that for a couple of years, and then I was going back to my MBA so that I could go and work for the same company, traveling the world, setting up model schools, because they were doing this one project in the UAE, but they were going to do it in other places. But then I got kind of convinced by IBM that I should join them. So that's where I went off that path, because I don't, like Nancy Brown Anderson and that group at the public sector was like, oh, you've worked with these public sector organizations and you have a technology background. Why don't you come here, and then you can actually live at home and you won't have to be everywhere else, and you can just travel. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe I'll try doing that for a little while. And that's kind of how I got started. So
Well, and a lot of people wondered the connection for me wanting to come to Pearson. And aside from having a parent as a teacher,
yeah.
I was quite inspired by Ginny Rometty. In 2013, I still remember back then she, mandated 40 hours of learning for all of us. And I remember in my mind, I was going, oh my God, that seems like a lot of hours that we need to do on top of, billable hours. But in the end, the Your Learning platform, it was another 4 years before that came into play. Then, I think we all embraced it, and digital technology moving so fast that, I don't know if you recall, but I was hitting, over 80 hours and not blinking an eye, 3 years later. And then I think even hit 120 1 year, because there was so much you had to stay on top of and stay ahead. So, coming from that environment and loving all the learning that I did, I just realized that Pearson's such a great alignment to who I am and what I'm passionate about. So there you go.
Yeah. And I think that's the skill for the future, right? Things are changing so fast. Actually understanding your learning style, and then being able to find things that fit your learning style, and then get the knowledge. That's going to be a skill for the future that, I think everyone will benefit from if they can, really understand. And Pearson is, again, an organization that's focused on that, but just individually, I don't think every industry, anywhere you go, things are changing. You need to understand how to learn, because there's going to be something you have to learn. And the better you can be at doing that, better off for you. So.
You're right. Like really embracing, some people call it a growth mindset. I think to your point, it's more about embracing the fact that there's always more to learn, and that you can benefit individually as it, and you can benefit in whatever team or company you work in by embracing that. And that once you dive in, it's not quite so scary as it seemed from a distance, right? And as I said, now that there's so much more, whatever you want to call it, bite-sized learning, whether it's certificates or what have you, that you can truly, transform your skill set or enhance your skill set, and everybody's better off. Your company, it might even have a positive impact on your salary, and that's powerful, right? And so learning is powerful. It's a powerful force for change, and as soon as I think people embrace that, that they suddenly realize and feel that, right? That euphoria of just, oh my gosh, I've really, I've grown, I've enhanced my skills, I've got this job now, and it creates excitement versus fear. So, but I think you have to get over that initial step of the fear, and that, maybe this is going to be a good thing in the long run, even though it's not the way it used to be in the past. So it's the change factor too, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I remember having a few conversations with friends and saying, inertia is powerful. Inertia is very powerful. So, you're somewhere, you're okay, things are okay at the moment, and it's easy to just stay. And if you can push through that, usually you end up in a good place. And I think that that's one of the things where when you have these, content where you can actually see, oh, okay, it's only one step, right? I'm not necessarily, you might walk a marathon, but it's really one step, right? Then another step, then another step.
Exactly.
And if you can see those smaller steps first, it's a lot easier than thinking about the big marathon.
You just take that first step, do that first try, and as you said, then it doesn't, dip your toe in the water, whatever you want to use as the analogy, right? And as soon as you do that, great things can happen, and I think you can surprise yourself too, which is always exciting. And so as you know, and I know, we're both passionate about learning and what it's all about and what the possibilities are. And I'm hoping, even from our dialogue, that people will be inspired to dip their toe or take that first step, whatever the case may be. Yeah.
I think that's a great place to end. So dip your toe. That's what we end off with.